Get in.
Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official audio show of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buchner, the Buck. I'm the guy who owns NotInHallOfFame.com, the sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's Season 1, Episode 49, almost 50, of the Hall of Fame show, and Evan Nolan and I, it's not quite a loaded show. Well, it is if you're sort of a fan of, I guess, the morbid topic of death, because we had a lot of people die. The biggest name that we're really going to do a deep dive into is that of Dick Allen, who many people, ourselves included, think should have been in the Baseball Hall of Fame a long, long time ago. And we look a bit at his career and ask that big question: why isn't he in yet? So without further ado, let's bring in Evan and discuss that very topic. Evan, it feels like 2020 has just struck again.
It has been a year, my friend. It has been a year. Like, we always joke like our podcast is probably the place to come from if you want a list of people who died this week you may have heard of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this week was tough, man.
Oh, just this hour was tough for me.
Yeah. I mean, and the beige mistress is back at it. She got Hungarian water polo player Laszlo Kuntz competed on the 1980 Summer Olympics and won a bronze medal, and Hungarian sprinter Kuba Rosnyi, who competed in the 100 meters men's side in 1964 Summer Olympics.
Damn.
Two more. It's crazy. I'm fully in belief that there are no more Hungarian athletes left at this point.
You'd think that. I think next week might prove different.
Entirely possible. So, anyway.
I wanted to sort of start off with, because pretty much all we're doing is talking about people who just died. This, like an hour ago, we're recording this Thursday night. This usually goes up a few days later. But I got a message from a friend of mine, and then like, oh my god, because she always like forwards off things that she thinks might be sort of interesting for what I do, which is this site. It's what I do, and
not legally as far as the government of Barbados believes, but yes, it's what you do.
well, I'm pretty sure I'm not on their radar, and if I have been, I probably had a beer with them at a bar somewhere. But
does Barbados even have radars? No, I'm kidding. That's a bad joke. I apologize to all the people in Barbados.
Which the only one listening will be myself, and then if I tell my wife to listen to it. So, yeah, we'll see. By the way, she listened to... If you tell your wife, it's only a 50-50 shot anyway. Yeah, well, by the way, she listened to the one from last week, and she says I was wrong. I was sexist with my rant on Sarah Fuller, and you corrected me correctly. But anyway.
Oh, well, I like her already.
Nice. Anywho, so about an hour ago, at least as we're recording this, it became sort of news, first reported on TMZ, that Tom Tiny Lister died from Friday fame. And this is the reason I sort of want to lead with this is he's... I don't want to say a patron saint for this site, but a patron saint for the idea of doing a weekly show. So apologies if I've mentioned this to you before, but I'm going to mention it again. A good friend of mine back in Canada, Dave Johnson, who I hope is listening, Dave and I, when we would go to the bar, we'd be those two rare Canadians when we'd go to the bar and say, hey, can you switch over to basketball? We're tired of watching hockey. That's not typical in Canada, but nevertheless. We would talk about the Basketball Hall of Fame and whatnot, and we made this in our mind, this ultimate club, because when they say party like a rock star, I think it should be party like an NBA player, right?
Yeah. But party like a 90s NBA player anyway.
That works too.
I feel like the Gold Club in Atlanta doesn't get quite as much traffic since Patrick Ewing retired, but, you know.
Damn. I actually got that reference, which is awesome. Damn. So, nevertheless, we sort of envisioned this what we call the Hall of Fame elevator, and at the end of every year, and we actually did one of the early shows before I ever sort of we started doing our weekly show. It was just Dave and I shooting the shit on basketball players, elevator up or elevator down. But to get into the club, you got to get past Debo, because we just anointed Debo as the guy. Like he was the bouncer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you either get past him or you don't. And last week we dedicated our show to Uncle Bob. This week I'd like to dedicate this to Debo.
I'm all for it, man.
Yeah.
And technically, the actor Tom Lister should probably be in our fictitious athletes, right?
Zeus from No Holds Barred was a one-time semifinalist.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I think Zeus's problem is that by the time you get to him, it's like the 5th page, and people may just not go that far.
Alphabetism. You know, like later on, we're probably gonna have to talk about racism again, but alphabetism is always going to be real.
Yeah, I also really, the first time I saw him, because I've seen Friday, but not for a while. But I watched The Fifth Element like a week ago again when I was bored one night, and he's President Lindbergh.
Yes,
in The Fifth Element as well. It was actually a couple weeks ago now, but yeah, there was. He was born blind in his right eye, which is kind of crazy, and still was a wrestler and an athlete and all sorts of stuff.
I wouldn't call him much of a wrestler, but yes.
Oh, all right, fine, and an actor. And he had an interesting, varied career. So
he made the most out of being a 6'8", muscle-bound black guy who had no range. Good and great on him. I mean, and then look at his legacy today. Debo Samuel of the 49ers. Zach Randolph, Zebo. They called James Harrison Debo.
Is Debo Samuel is he got his name from Friday?
I think so. I mean, I just assumed so. I didn't look this up. Again, I'm not prepared like every week.
Yeah, his name is Tyson Raekwon Debo Samuel.
The timeline would sort of fit, wouldn't it? I mean, Friday came out, 95? He's only in his second year. That makes sense. He'd be under that age.
He was given the nickname Debo by his father, Galen, after the character named Debo, played by Tiny Lister Jr. in Friday.
There you go.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. I'm not just a pretty face, and I'm not even that.
You're not just even that.
No, not at all. So I thought that would just sort of like be a nice way to start with just someone I wanted to celebrate. I think that's something we don't do enough of. We talk about people who have passed away, but let's just try to celebrate them a little bit more. I know it's going to be hard when we get to Dick Allen, but
right.
Let's try.
I mean, there are a few people this week. You could talk about David Landers. Squiggy passed away this week.
Yes. Oh, I'm so happy you brought that up, because I was going to mention that, because he was in one of our fictitious athlete films.
What movie is that? Is he in?
He's not a nominee. Maybe I should add him as a nominee. In a film that you and I both have referenced a lot fondly.
Wait, he's the commentator in League of Their Own, right?
Yes!
Oh, that's right. It took me a second. I'm like, wait, what was he in? Wow. So, yeah, that was another guy that's like, they just had I saw something after he passed away. Someone had posted just all of the lines on Laverne and Shirley right before he and one of my favorite guys, Michael McKean, would walk in like, so how could this day get any worse? And they'd walk in, hello. It's like, it was a dumb recurring joke, like Norm walking into the bar and Cheers. But, yeah, David Lander passing away at only 73. But
he'd been ill, I believe, for
a
long time. So, I mean,
yeah.
Who would have thought? I mean, granted, I never thought Laverne and Shirley was particularly any good. But if you would have gone back and and said okay, all right, Kirk, you're 10 years old. Here, let's look back at Laverne and Shirley. One of these people is going to become a big-time director, and one of these people will become one of your favorite actors / musicians. No way.
Yeah. And one of them will become the part owner of the minor league baseball team, the Portland Beavers.
Wait. Who's that?
Lander.
Oh, did he? Okay, I didn't even know that.
And he was also a member of the sabermetrics organization, SABR, for many years.
No shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm on his Wikipedia page. So when I was looking up for what happened to him.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he had multiple sclerosis, but yeah, he was involved in sports more deeply than I thought. So.
Wow. No, that's me. I had no idea.
Yeah. And sorry, it's more we're speaking about one other person I think we need to bring up. Oh, well, first of all, Paul Sarbanes passed away from Sarbanes-Oxley Act, one of the most important senators of the last 50 years or so. He passed away from Maryland. But more importantly, American Hall of Famer, if nothing else, Chuck Yeager.
Mm-hmm.
One of the coolest dudes of all time. Passed away at the age of 97. What were the odds you'd have gotten in 1948 that dude would still be alive in 2020? I mean,
not as slim as the odds that we would have pegged when we were kids that Keith Richards would still be alive.
Oh, I know. It's amazing Keith Richards has outlasted all these people. But Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier. I remember his plane. If you can walk away from a landing, that's a good landing. If you can use the plane the next day, that's a great landing. But yeah, I mean, that man was absolutely ridiculous. One of the coolest people ever to live.
Yes, absolutely.
And made it all the way to 97. Talk about people who in there. And he's a Hall of Famer. He's in the National Aviation Hall of Fame. So, which is not something I've ever really looked into. But he's a member since 1973.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, there's a lot of people in the National Aviation Hall of Fame looking at this.
Are there a few other passings before we get to, God, I hate to say it, sort of like a, what did you call it when we did that little bit of an Oscar in memoriam bit? The hammer, you called it?
Oh, the hammer.
Okay. Yeah, so are there a few more? God, it's not how I want to do this because I always hate that when they do that.
I mean, this week has just been brutal. So, I mean, I'll run through a few of them quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Former Giants coach Ray Perkins passed away at the age of 79. Also, former receiver for the Baltimore Colts and played at Alabama. He's in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. We had we have NHL Hall of Famer, a hockey linesman, actually, Neil Armstrong, not the guy who landed on the moon. He passed away at the age of 87. Again, it's great that hockey has officials in their Hall of Fame, because as we mentioned before, the NFL still has 0. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact they had their 100th anniversary and a chance to take care of that. But Armstrong passed away at age 87. For musicians, we had Howard Wales, part-time keyboardist for the Grateful Dead, most famous for his work on Truckin' and Candyman and Broke Down Palace from the American Beauty album. He passed away at the age of 77 of a cerebral hemorrhage. We had Jason Slater, one of the founding members of Third Eye Blind. He was a founding bass player for Third Eye Blind, passed away at the age of only 49. He died from liver failure. We also had, for musicians, very odd, weird collaborator with Brian Eno, Harold Budd, like a very strange dude who had a music career kind of later in life. In his 40s is when he finally became famous. Grew up in like the Mojave Desert, playing weird piano stuff that most people didn't get. But Brian Eno loved him, and he did a bunch of stuff with Robin Guthrie as well. But he passed away at the age of 84. Let's see, what else we got? We got a couple of tennis Hall of Famers passing away. We had Dennis Ralston passed away at the age of 78. He won French Open, Wimbledon, and the U.S. Open 3 times. So he was a member of the International Tennis Hall of Fame in 1987. He was inducted. We also had Alex Olmedo Rodriguez, who was born in Peru and became a United States citizen. Passed away at the age of 84. Part of the U.S.'s winning Davis Cup team in 58. Won the U.S. Open in doubles, and then won singles titles with the Australian and Wimbledon. It was also inducted in the same class, actually, in 1987. So 2 members of the same induction class passed away 2 days apart.
Oh, wow.
And then we have College Football Hall of Famer Jack Scarbath passed away. He was the Heisman Trophy runner-up in 1952. First All-American, first team out of Maryland, back when Maryland actually was good at football. But he passed away earlier this week. And International Golf Hall of Famer, World Golf Hall of Famer Peter Aylis from England passed away. Who was elected to the Golf Hall of Fame in 2012. He passed away at the age of, he was born in 31, so what does that make him? 89? So there was a lot of folks there for that. But there are actually, I know we're going to get to the hammer for baseball. Before we get there are 2 kind of characters from baseball who also passed away this week. One Red Sox and one Yankee I'd like to spend a couple minutes on, if you don't mind.
Please.
So the first one is the Red Sox, Rogelio Moret Torres, or better known as Roger Moret. Was a pitcher for the Red Sox, but also played for the Rangers and who else did he play for? The Braves. So Moret was on the 75 team for the Red Sox. I made it all the way to. Well, they won the greatest World Series game of all time, and then I don't think they played Game 7 in 75. They declared the Red Sox and Reds equal partners, I think, in that one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But his career ended when he was supposed to be the starting pitcher against the Tigers on April 12th of 78. He was sitting in the locker room in a catatonic state holding a slipper. And he was unresponsive when they got to him, and he was taken directly from there to a psychiatric hospital and never played again. But what was more interesting is, I think I've told you before that I have one of my least favorite sports movies of all time, and it's about one of my team, is Fever Pitch. But that story is one of the things that they used to prove the curse of the Bambino existed, that our starting pitcher couldn't even come out because there's a catatonic state. But he played for the Rangers at that point.
Actually, you've never brought this up.
One of those stories out there that it's weird for baseball and everything, but he passed away from cancer at the age of 71 in his hometown of Guayama, Puerto Rico, earlier this week.
Before you go on, I don't think you ever told that story. That's a new one. Fever Pitch is wrong for a lot of other reasons, but yes.
Fever Pitch is one of my least favorite of all time, mainly because of what Jimmy Fallon said afterwards. So Jimmy Fallon said that after doing Fever Pitch, he had become a Yankees, Mets, and Red Sox fan.
How is that possible?
Yeah, and I was just like, it's like when John Kerry tried to talk about sports when he was running for president. If you don't care, that's fine. Just don't say something that dumb.
Yeah, it's right up there with Kamala Harris trying to be a rap fan. But anyway. Actually, back to Fever.
We went through that before.
Yeah, one last thing on Fever Pitch, though. That's just bring my wife back into this. That is probably the only film that we both agreed on unanimously. Here's a sports flick. Oh, I'm gonna like it. Here's a chick flick. She's gonna like it. No, we both hated it.
Fever Pitch is not good. The book is pretty good, actually, but Fever Pitch, the book is about soccer.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
The 2004 Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
And finally, one other person I had to talk about before we get to the big name here, Phil Linz. So Phil Linz played for the New York Yankees, and he played mostly at shortstop. He was most famous, though, actually not for his playing career, but for. Did you ever read Ball 4 by?
No.
Jim Bouton?
I want to, though. I mean, I've heard so much about that, but I've never read it.
Okay, so in that book, there's something called the harmonica incident. So in '64, the general manager of the Yankees retired, and Ralph Hoke moved to be general manager, went from manager to general manager. So they hired Yogi Berra as the manager. So in August of '64, they lost to the White Sox on the road, and they're on the bus traveling back, and Linz has his harmonica out, and he's playing like a sad version of Mary Had a Little Lamb on the back of the bus. And Berra thought that the like sad cowboy, around the campfire style he was playing it, was mocking the team, was disrespectful. So he yelled to Linz to pipe down, but Linz couldn't hear him because he was in the back of the bus and kept playing. So he yelled it again, and he said, "If you don't knock that off, I'm going to come back there and kick your ass." Linz couldn't hear him again, so he asked Mickey Mantle, "What did he say?" And Mantle said, "Play louder." And so he did. And Berra walked the back of the bus, and either Linz threw the harmonica at him, or Berra knocked the harmonica out of Linz's hands. Either way, Joe Pepitone, the first baseman, got cut by the harmonica. The harmonica cut Joe Pepitone's leg. And the Yankees fired Berra the next day because they thought he lost control of the team. So this is one of the great stories from baseball that we only know because Ball 4 came out. But just one of the great stories from baseball for a guy who, he played from 62 to 68, batted .235 with 11 homers and 96 RBIs in his career. Never going to make the Hall of Fame. But just one of those stories that we know because of that book, and if you ever read it, the harmonica incident is kind of legendary, one of the legendary stories. So anyway, Phil Linz passed away at the age of 81 earlier this week. I don't actually see what from. So anyway, there you go.
So maybe before we get to the hammer, let's just do something kind of happy. Congrats to Al Michaels, the recipient of the this year's recipient of the 45th of the Ford C. Frick Award. It's not technically means you're in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but you're in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's there's a section for the Ford Frick Award in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but you're not officially a member.
Right.
So, yeah.
Al Michaels, I was thinking about this today. He's my favorite all-time announcer, but he's not my favorite specific announcer. If I think about baseball, it's Vin Scully. If I think about football, it's Pat Summerall for me historically. In hockey, it's just like, God, I'm blanking on their names. This is embarrassing. From when I used to watch Hockey Night in Canada. In basketball, it's Marv Albert. But Al Michaels can do it all. He is my be-all and end-all. I think, to me, personally, he is my favorite announcer of all time. That's just me. And I think I've said this before.
He's exceptionally good at basically every sport. And, of course, he's got one of the most famous the calls of all time, the You Believe in Miracles.
Yes.
So that's very hard to argue. I'm trying to think who I like better than him. If there's anyone, I think overall, for basketball, I just love listening to Gus Johnson because I get so excited about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For hockey, I know he's kind of hokey, but I enjoy Doc Emmerich. I like his use of Doc Emmerich has 6 words that he uses that nobody else uses. He ladled that pass over there, or ricochet. The word ricochet happens once every 12 words for Doc Emmerich. So I've always enjoyed Doc Emmerich for hockey. For football, not Dan Fouts. No. For football, I really always enjoyed the late Keith Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
For college football, certainly. Vern Lundquist, I think, does a really good job. I'm partial to the late Gil Santos, who's a guy for all the Patriots ones. I always thought he did a great job on the radio. He was kind of the standard bearer for that. And then there was left baseball. Whew. Scully's great. I've never really heard him that much, though. So
okay.
I'm trying to think national broadcasters.
Yeah, because when I was a kid, they had the God, it was on NBC. I think it was NBC. Every Saturday afternoon, it would be the national game, and it was Scully and Joe Garagiola. Apologies.
Garagiola, you got it. You got it eventually.
All right, thank you. So that was sort of my first indoctrination of Vin Scully, because that was my early passion, was just listening to or watching baseball, and yeah, so hearing Vin on the national level before it was decades before I even knew he was the voice of the Dodgers. I had no idea.
I always liked Mel Allen for This Week in Baseball.
Oh my God, yes. How about that?
I was a big fan of Mel Allen. Not that is dating us at all.
I think we've already established that. Well, I'll put it this way. Combined, we're not 100.
That's true. Not yet. We're working on it. My birthday's coming up. My wife's birthday was Tuesday, so I'm 4 weeks younger than her. So we're getting closer. We're into our 90s at this point. So
yay.
Yeah, but no, Mel Allen was great. And actually, you know what else I used to watch, and I wish we could find again? I used to watch, because one of the things I love, which probably got me into sports in the first place, is I love a slow elimination of things. So I love tournaments in general. But they used to have the 1960s home run derby in the empty stadiums, and to be Jackie Jensen against Mel Ott. And you just just watch these guys in an empty Wrigley Field, Ernie Banks against Willie Mays, just sitting there hitting home runs in black and white. It was really, really cool. I used to love watching that. I wish they would. The baseball network should just go find those things and put them up for I don't know, March when they don't have anything else to do. Just show an old get the rights and show an old Hank Aaron against Johnny Mize or home run derby. How cool! I would watch that in the middle of the day. So anyway, again, I'm old, but those were cool.
Yeah, if you're old, what the hell am I? Jesus.
Yeah, well, you at this point have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Patriots. They are. I know we just did the death roll, but we're right there again. So anyway, by the way, one of the folks you should mention is Dick Cagle as well, who's a sports writer who won the Taylor Spink Award. So he is also going into the Hall of Fame. He was the editor-in-chief for the Sporting News, but he's out of Kansas City, covered the Cardinals and the Royals for Major League Baseball. But he was the Taylor Spink Award winner So they have the broadcaster and the writer who unofficially go in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and Cagle was the person this year. Last year's was Nick Cafardo, who was a great guy out of Boston for the Globe, who unfortunately died at spring training in the Red Sox spring training facility last year before the season. And before that was Jason Stark. So, and unfortunately one of the winners is the curly-haired boyfriend himself, Dan Shaughnessy, who we had a spirited debate about on our little boards now we have over on Twitter, our group chats. So, anyway.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. So, I guess we get to the hammer now.
Yeah.
This
Speaking of sports writers.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, exactly. This might be the first time we've ever talked about a passing that ever really resonated with what we do, which is Hall of Fame discussions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there might be one, but I can't think of one that just feels more timely or just more symbiotic. Dick Allen, in my opinion, should have been in the Baseball Hall of Fame a long time ago. So maybe that's what we're going to discuss today. Why isn't he? Why wasn't he? What are we missing, or what did the writers miss?
Here's a question. Now, we talk about this, whether this is a baseball player or what did they add in as him as a person?
Well, yeah, and I think you're right on that. There's a lot to sort of dissect about Dick Allen. The stories about him, my God, you can sort of like carve them on each side of the ledger. And I think as you and I are progressing in a project that we're going to go into a lot more greater depth, and I've said, I feel like a broken record here, but people vote on people.
Yeah.
And Dick Allen, from everything, and I've been reading about him all day, and just like as much as I could get my hands on, seems to be one of those characters who did things the way he wanted to, had a massive chip on his shoulder, and that chip was earned. I think when we talk about, and God, I hate the fact that we're going about race in sports again. I'm really tired of talking about race, but here we go again.
Unfortunately, though, the history of sports is tied up in it.
Yeah,
and
so
particularly when you have people who are passing away in their late 70s, early 80s, that's the heart of. I mean, that's the hopefully in many ways the tail end of the worst part, but it's still the heart of when things were real bad.
Right. So, I mean, Dick Allen is, and maybe you can sort of like jump in here a lot of this, because as a Canadian, it kind of flies in what I sort of learned. Dick Allen was really the first black star of the Philadelphia Phillies. And again, as a Canadian, I always think of racism in the United States and in the South. That's not just the case. I mean, obviously it's everywhere. Because he went through a hell of a lot as, again, the first black star in Philadelphia. But he's also one of those guys, from everything I sort of read, he just would say whatever, not necessarily say whatever was on his mind, but he wasn't, I don't want to say media friendly, but he just said, like you like me or you don't. Am I kind of fair on that?
No, agreed. Yep. Okay.
And so, like, he had a lot of it. He had a lot of issues with the media and with the fans as he was coming up. Not only was he the first black star, like through the 60s, he was the best player in the Phillies by far, and it really wasn't even close. So the fans would get on him for some reasons, some justified, because defensively he was shit. From everything I've been reading about his defense, and just from the advanced analytics that we know.
Mm-hmm.
that has done him absolutely no favors, especially as we sort of go with advanced analytics. Because if he would just be just like even a poor defender, he would probably have a B WAR of like 80. Even if he was just poor. And he wasn't even that. But he had an altercation with, let me bring that up, not Frank Howard. A teammate who was, a very super popular teammate, white teammate who was in the latter end of his career, who sort of flipped out at him for no real reason from what I could see. Well, no real reason that we know. And it turned a lot of the Phillies fans against him. So Dick Allen. I mean, even just the other shit that he went through, where they would call him Richie. Like, well, how does that happen?
Yeah, I don't know. And that's a funny thing. Like, when I really started getting the Hall of Fame stuff, because Dick Allen ended up. So the last time he was really up for election was 2014, because the way they do these things,
right?
And he ended up one vote short of being elected to the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And they were supposed to meet again this year, but with COVID, they decided that how do I want to put this? That Zoom was too hard to figure out, and so they would have met already, and we would have known whether or not he was in already.
At this point, we would have, yeah.
And the odds are that he probably would have gotten. But yeah, Dick Allen in Philly had a bit of reputation. He was someone who didn't want to be treated like a second-class citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Basically on his skin. And there's stories of people dumping trash in his front yard and dumping stuff on him in his stadium, like his home fans.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was routing the bases, he used to write the words like boo and no in the dirt and then scratch it out as like a response to the fans and everything. He was like, he never had a reputation for being a troublemaker in like the other stops along the way that he had. It was just in Philly. And then the interesting thing was they just retired his number. They broke their rule of needing to be a Hall of Famer, and they retired his number in September, right, of this year?
Yeah. You and I talked about that because we both sort of thought that this was the Phillies organization's attempt to help him get into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and he's deserving. I mean, everyone loves analytics, and regardless of what his defensive metrics are. So, using the Hall of Fame statistics things they have, for the black ink, the average Hall of Famer is a 27. His score in black ink is 27.
Mm-hmm.
Gray ink, the average Hall of Famer is a 144. He's a 159. For the Hall of Fame monitor, the average Hall of Famer is 100. He's a 99. I mean, it's just like for Jaws, he is there are 15 Hall of Famers who are at third baseman. The career WAR average for them is 68.4. He's 58.8, but the peak for him is 45.9, which is above the 7-year peak for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And his Jaws is like right there. During a 10-year period, the only people who beat him in home runs from 64 to 74 were some guys named Henry Aaron, Harmon Killebrew, Willie Stargell, and Willie McCovey. And during that time, his OPS was second to Aaron. He was Aaron was 941, he was 940. He was on base plus slugged.
Yeah, and a four-time champ of that. Four-time OPS champ, which now is considered, at least it is to me, I don't know, you might feel the same way. To me, OPS is like the stat.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, yeah, he was, I mean, I never really saw him play Mike Schmidt, who, by the way, he has better Hall of Fame standard numbers than. He was ahead of Schmidt in OPS. But Mike Schmidt said that Allen was one of the greatest mentors he ever had, and Schmidt, who is a notoriously prickly individual as well, has been one of Allen's staunchest supporters trying to get him in over the last decade and a half at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that Allen at least had his retirement ceremony with the Phillies. Because let's be honest, they're going to meet next year, and Allen is probably going to get into the Hall of Fame. Finally.
Let's
just like
hope.
Ron Santo did after he died.
Yeah.
And just like Marvin Miller. Marvin Miller said, I'm only going to get in after I die, and he finally did. They still haven't put Buck O'Neil in yet, I don't think, right? Have they?
No, they haven't.
They put Buck O'Neil in charge of the committee for what Negro Leaguer Hall of Famer should be there, and then they didn't elect the man.
Well,
And,
but basically they told him okay, come up with some people, but not you.
Which is dumb because Buck O'Neil is as worthy as Phil Rizzuto, certainly. So, or Harold Baines, but again, we've been over that. That's not even setting the floor. That's setting the sub basement as the floor. No offense,
though, at some point,
very good player.
At some point, I'm going to go on a Billy Wagner tangent. I would, Harold Baines over Billy Wagner, but go on.
Yeah. So, by the way, just speaking of the ballot, just because Billy Wagner's on there, I'm almost guaranteeing I'm going to win that bet of the over 7.5.
Yeah, I know you are.
Because I think Burley's going to get 5% on his own. And then I just need 2.5 out of everybody else. Torrey Hunter's going to get a few and everything else. So, but anyway, going back to Dick / don't call him Richie Allen. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think him being somewhat allegedly troublesome and being African American is probably what kept him out of the hall thus far.
I think
honestly.
so. Because it's people who met the guy and Allen from everything I read. So when he won the Rookie of the Year, he says, "Okay, what does that mean to me? Is it getting me any money?" No, this is a time when you're signing contracts where that doesn't mean any money. So, did he rub a lot of baseball journalists the wrong way? I'm sure he did. Did he give a shit at the time? Probably not. So, was he a cantankerous individual? Probably. Was racism involved with a lot of this? Absolutely. But when we look at his overall... Okay, actually, this is what I'm glad I just remembered this. This is what I wanted to ask you as a Red Sox fan. Is Dick Allen someone who should be in the Hall of Fame over Jim Rice?
Another notoriously prickly African American man.
So, was he considered honestly? I didn't know that. I'm just looking at stat wise. Was Jim Rice?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Rice got in on his 15th bite at the apple.
I remember that, but I didn't know that he was. He had media trouble. Did he?
Yeah, well, he didn't like the media so much.
Oh, okay.
And that's part of it with him as well. Yeah, I'd have to look up their stats back to back because, again, I grew up a Red Sox fan, so my view of Jim Ed Rice, is a little bit different. Let me just grab Jim Rice here on Baseball Reference. Give me a second.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, again, this is another example of how we don't really talk beforehand. 2 tweets
no, but I
between
mean,
each other.
Rice also has a Triple Crown and an MVP, which makes a little bit of difference. But I'm looking at who is he most... Yeah, so Rice is... So usually they'll say same things. Black ink, Rice is a 33. The gray ink Rice is a 176. For a Hall of Fame monitor, he's a 146. If I remember correctly, it was 27, 150-something, and 99 for those three. So just according to those things, Rice is a little bit ahead. But again, it took Rice all that time to get in, and Rice was on the ballot. Rice and Allen on the ballot at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
For a while. I'm trying to see. Rice's last year in the ballot, or Allen's last year in the ballot was 90.
It was 97, I think. Yeah, 97.
Was it on in 90? Interesting. Yeah, so Rice at that point was in his third year. So Dick Allen got 16.7% that year. Rice ended up with 37.6. So he didn't have nearly as far to go as Allen did. Allen was in the teens most of his time on the ballot.
Yeah, he never got to 20.
Yeah. Although he beat out Ted Simmons pretty badly, who we all think should have been a Hall of Famer. The 1 year Simmons was on the ballot in 94. Still, I don't understand how Ted Simmons is probably the 8th or 9th best catcher of all time, got 3.7%.
It's all your name and legacy. Like it's a strange thing. I mean, like it's again at some point I'll do a preview. I'm going to go on a Billy Wagner rant at some point in time, and if Wagner is probably is going to get in before somebody like Dan Quisenberry, and that pisses me off.
Quisenberry is also one of the nicest guys in the history of baseball, too, and Wagner is another notoriously prickly individual.
See,
is that just a baseball thing? Now I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking of that.
I didn't even know that Wagner was considered that. I honestly did not know that Wagner had this reputation. I just look at his overall. When I think of Billy Wagner, and again, that's not where I thought we were going to go here today, because it never is. Billy Wagner to me was never the guy. Quisenberry was. So you can compare the numbers all you want to. Like Bruce Sutter was one of those guys. Wagner isn't. And then whenever I see those updates from Ryan Thibodeau, not Mr. Tibbs, on Twitter, it's like Wagner keeps growing. Like, what the hell am I missing? And I don't think I'm wrong. You writers, you're wrong. But and I don't even hate Billy Wagner. I don't. It's just he's not a Hall of Famer. But that's neither here nor there.
I do have to say, I enjoy following Ryan's stuff. One of my favorite ballots so far, because it made no sense to me, was the guy who voted for. There was one guy who voted for Gary Sheffield and Andy Pettit, but not Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, not Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens.
Yeah, because probably those latter three pissed him off.
It's just like, and I don't think he voted for Schilling either. I mean, so far with those ballots, nobody's getting the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I saw that too. And I was sort of thinking before that Schilling was almost a lock because he can now get in without being the centerpiece.
Yeah, but I think I mentioned they may not elect anybody
because they don't have to.
They don't have to.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of our theories are good. And if Schilling gets in, you're right, and it's a good theory. And if Schilling nobody gets in, I'm right, and it's still a good theory. I think they're both good theories. If you're going to put Schilling in, this is year to do it. For next year, if he's not in, next year it's just going to be a ridiculous ballot because you're going to have Clemens, Bonds, Schilling, A-Rod, and David Ortiz all on at the same time.
You know what? Just induct them all. Induct them all at this point. Just and then invite Congress.
Yeah, and Manny Ramirez. I didn't even bring him up. I mean, like, it's crazy. Yeah, but anyway, back to Dick Allen. By the way, Dick Allen's OPS is better than Ken Griffey Jr. as well.
Oh, so, wow. Okay, I didn't even catch that.
Although Griffey's peak was ridiculous. After he got injured and he was over in, the White Sox years and the time in, he had some good years with the Reds. Those White Sox years probably dragged him down quite a bit. So
I think closing off with Allen, whether that was important to him getting in the Baseball Hall or not, I don't know. The quotes that he did say was, I'm in the Negro Hall of Fame. That's enough for me. Negro Baseball Hall of Fame. Whether he's posturing or not, I mean, we'll never know. Probably a little bit, I think. But nevertheless, I kind of hope that was enough for him. I really do. Because, like, putting him in now, it's... I don't want to say it feels wrong. It just feels shallow. Or hollow. Hollow is a better word.
Hollow's the right word, yeah.
Yeah.
I understand, but it's almost definitely going to happen. I think he was going to get in anyway, and then we'd be sad that he passed away before he actually got his induction ceremony had they had it. Mm-hmm. But now we just get the whole Ron Santo sort of treatment on it.
Although Santo really wanted to get in so bad. And another player who deserved it. I mean, both Dick Allen and Ron Santo, I think you and I would both agree, are baseball Hall of Famers, and they should have been a long time before it happened.
Agreed.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. You know what? Considering all the death we talked about we made this actually pretty upbeat. We're awesome.
Yeah, death and racism. What could be better? and we didn't even talk about like any like body parts of any '80s TV stars. So I mean that went well for us as well. So
I love your callback to Punky Brewster, but yes.
There we go.
Yes, absolutely.
I wasn't going to mention her by name. I don't want Salil Moon Fry's lawyers talking to us, but you know. So
I'm in the islands. It's a lot harder to sue me.
It's just like there's just this protective aura around like Grand Cayman that covers all of you guys.
Yes, we'll run with that. Yeah, that's the ticket. Here's another '80s callback. 10 points for the first person who sort of mentions that. So yeah, we'll see what sort of we have next week, and I guess with that, the bar is closed.
Yeah, this was short. I didn't even finish my Chivas. And the Patriots haven't even lost yet. It's weird. They've lost, but they haven't officially lost. So I don't know what we're going to do about just as a side, I have no idea what we're going to do about quarterback next year. In many ways, I have enjoyed the Cam Newton experience because he's like upbeat and fun, and while having quarterback and run like that's amazing. But the dude can't complete a screen pass. He cannot be the quarterback next year. I don't know if it's Stidham. I don't know if we somehow end up with like some other guy who is somehow a free agent, and end up having him in there if we draft somebody. But yeah, it's going to be easier to follow Cam Newton in New England than it was to follow Tom Brady. So at least he had that happen. So
you know what I'd like to see, and I'm not really into whole fashion and whatnot, but a Cam Newton Russell Westbrook fashion off would be really interesting.
Mm.
It's sort of like a battle of the runway. You and I probably, well, maybe I don't know, but me definitely not. Would not be a good judge for that, but I'd watch that on television.
Yeah, I have also watched Project Runway.
I can't say that I have.
I've watched a lot of Project Runway, so yeah. Anyway, no, I'm actually sort of hoping. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I like Ian Book, the quarterback for Notre Dame. I mean, we're not going to get Trevor Lawrence,
no,
unless Lawrence decides to sit out a year. And this is kind of I'm conceding my beer now at this point. The Bills have won games I thought they're going to lose, so good for them. But I would not get Trevor Lawrence, but I think we might be able to get someone like Ian Book who can throw and run. And that'd be very interesting to have someone like that in the, and someone like that with a winning pedigree. I mean, the dude has the most wins in Notre Dame history. I don't know if you've heard, Notre Dame's pretty good at football historically.
I don't know what it is about like Notre Dame. I mean, I have no allegiance in college sports, which might be why I just love watching college football on Saturdays, because it's the only time where I don't have to worry about my fan hat. I can just enjoy it. There's just something about Notre Dame I don't like. Never have. You know what? I think I know what it is. It's just sometimes I don't like Notre Dame fans.
Okay. I mean, most Notre Dame fans are New Yorkers, so I understand that.
Yeah, I think it's that. There's a line from a Canadian alternative band called Sloan. It's not the band I hate; it's their fans, and that sort of permeates towards a lot of things, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, for example. I don't really hate the Toronto Maple Leafs so much as I hate obnoxious Maple Leaf fans, and I grew up in the Toronto area, so I know whereof I speak.
Yeah, I guess it's the same thing with like the Ravens for me. I don't hate the Ravens players. I like watching their coach cry because he's the biggest crybaby in sports. But their fans are pretty bad. You'd think Baltimore invented football with the way they act. So
I thought they did.
Well, maybe the Colts did, but
nice. So we'll see what we come up with next week. If not, we might have a basketball preview on our hands. I'm working on hopefully that'll be up by then, the preview of the 50 active players to look at for their Hall of Fame rank. That could be sort of interesting.
Number one, of course, is Jason Tatum, I know. So
Jason Tatum will now, well, no, but
he's in his fourth season. The answer is no. So, no, I was just kidding. So,
when we get to Kemba Walker, yeah, it certainly helps, but it's fascinating.
Kemba Walker will be an interesting one. Kyrie Irving's an interesting one. There's a few interesting ones. It's also, well, I'll save it for next week, but what's going on with the Rockets and all the mortgaging they did to get that team and then everybody now wanting out? I think there's a discussion in there that we should probably have as well. So
I don't even know what the discussion is. I mean, I know what it is, but I mean, I don't know. They all want out, but I just don't know why.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's also a question as to how badly the players are going to get burned in the next CBA. Because there's the owners now think they have too much power. Like multiple teams, I know that Paul George conned the Clippers into signing him to a up to $224 million 5-year deal.
I saw that. Oh, they're going to get burned on that one.
Oh my God! But like all the mortgaging the Clippers had to do to get him and Kawhi there, at least they're keeping him. Last year, in order to keep Harden happy, they went and got Chris Paul, and then traded Paul for Westbrook, and now have traded Westbrook for Wall, and they've traded all these draft picks along the way, and now Harden wants to go someplace else.
Oh,
and they've built their entire team around him. And they don't do any of those deals without Harden say so. So at some point between that and Anthony Davis forcing his way out of the Pelicans and a whole bunch of these things, I mean, the player empowerment era, I'm in favor of that. But there's at some point the players are going to have to they're going to be giving stuff back in the next CBA because the owners aren't going to go for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Something's going to have to happen. So.
All right. Well, looks like it's all about hoops next week.
Sounds good, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care. Thank you all so much for listening. We hope everyone out there is staying safe. Look for a lot more content from us at nonhalloffame.com. .com.